This is Andre, your host. People who watched the gripping prophecy of the emergence of the four beasts of Daniel 7 told me it was incredible. To think that the Bible is its own interpreter and never makes a mistake in decoding its own symbols. During this lecture, we are focusing on the rise of a strange little horn. Who is he? Let us ask Francois to proceed, and may God be with you as new and shocking facts are being revealed.
In a previous lecture, we studied about the mysterious dream of the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar. We carefully listened to the prophet's interpretation of the dream concerning the image of gold, silver, brass, iron, and iron mixed with clay. We discovered that it is a prophecy concerning the rise and fall of four great empires, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. In AD 476, the Fourth Empire broke up into what is known today as Western Europe. Greek mythology that was studied and taught at the Babylonian palace claimed that life begins with gold when you are born. As you grow a little older, you enter the silver period of life, and then when you enter your late 40s, your gold and silver complexion change into brass. Now this is a very hard time for ladies when they see those wrinkles appear. And of course, wrinkles ignore all the expensive beauty creams and just grow deeper and deeper. And although men think that they are still enjoying their golden age, the mirror tells them that they have entered the brass phase of life. In our old age, we tend to become hard like iron. We become fixed in our ways, and then eventually we die and crumble into the dust. The Greek philosophers at the Babylonian court taught the king that after death, the cycle begins all over again, a kind of immortal reincarnation. What a miserable philosophy, to think that one has to start life all over again. Get frustrated, get divorced, experiencing pain and agony. No, thank you. I prefer a better life in a better land without tears and hardships. But to the pleasant surprise of the king who believed in this never-ending cycle of misery, Daniel shared God's good news. There are no cycles after death. Misery will not continue forever and ever. The God of heaven is going to make a sudden end to this sinful planet with all its woes. God is going to establish an everlasting kingdom of joy, peace, and happiness. Daniel 2 verse 44. The God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. While Jesus was on earth, he taught a variety of beautiful lessons on human relationships. This is very important. But he also referred us to the book of Daniel and its end-time prophecies and encouraged us to study it. Let's read what he said. Matthew 24:15. So when you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation, spoken of through the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand. What is the meaning of holy place? And what is the desolating sacrilege? The NIV calls it the abomination that causes desolation, or the desolating sacrilege. There is a golden rule in Bible study. If you do not understand the meaning of a specific verse, look for a similar text to explain it to you. In this instance, we want to know what holy place means, and we want to know whom the abomination is that causes desolation. Luke gives us the answer. Luke 21 verse 20. When you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, you will know that its desolation is near. In Matthew 24:15 it speaks of the holy place. Here it says that the holy place is what? Jerusalem. In Matthew it speaks of the sacrilege, the abomination that causes desolation. Here the sacrilege or the abomination is called what? Armies. What do you do when danger is dangerously near? Well, you flee. While you're looking at a model of Jerusalem from the time of Christ, I want to ask you a question. Which army surrounded or besieged Jerusalem and eventually destroyed it as Christ predicted? Can history and archaeology give us this information? Yes. Let me quickly tell you what happened. In the year 66 AD, the Roman general Cestius Gallus besieged the city. But then, for no reason whatsoever, he suddenly withdrew. The Jews pursued the Romans, and this gave the Christians an opportunity to flee. In 70 AD, another Roman general by the name of Titus returned to Jerusalem and retaliated the 66 AD defeat and destroyed the city. Amazing discoveries have recently been made in the old city of Jerusalem. Here you are looking at the Kotel Tunnel leading to the bedrock of the original Western Wall. For the first time, modern scholars as well as the public can look at the results of the 70 AD destruction of Jerusalem by the Romans. What an amazing confirmation of the prophecy of Christ that the city would be destroyed. And here you are looking at another archaeological proof of the 70 AD destruction of Jerusalem by the Roman general Titus. When archaeologists excavated this home, they discovered that it belonged to a certain priestly family called Cathros, who lived in close proximity to the temple. If they had heeded the warning of Jesus in Matthew 24:15 concerning the future destruction of the city and fled with the Christians, their lives would have been spared. Let us bear in mind that the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD serves as a type of the end-time destruction of this world. So let us heed the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation. When I looked at the little chapel on the slopes of Mount Olives called Dominus Flevit, I thought of the time that Jesus wept over the city just before his crucifixion. Matthew 23 verse 37. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you, how often have I longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing. With his divine prophetic eye, Jesus saw how hundreds of thousands of Jews were to be slain by the Romans inside and outside the city of Jerusalem. He wanted to spare them this terrible ordeal, but they ignored his appeal to study the prophecies of Daniel, and they perished. Let us listen to the appeal of Jesus and study the book of Daniel with more vigor and dedication. Very soon an enemy, an abomination that will persecute us, will again surround Jerusalem, his church. We will do well to discover who he is and at what time we should flee. Let us always remember that what happened to ancient Jerusalem is going to happen to the entire world very soon. Come with me to the city of Rome and let's visit the Arch of Titus at the Forum. Does he make any mention of the fact that he destroyed Jerusalem? Yes. On this relief he portrays the fate of Jewish prisoners. They ignored the appeal of Jesus to study the book of Daniel in regards to the destruction of Jerusalem. When I looked at the golden candlestick without a light, I thought of the verse in 2 Peter 1:19 where the prophetic word is compared to a light shining in a dark place. When the Jewish people ignored the prophecies of Daniel, they had absolutely no light to guide them. Priests used to blow these trumpets to announce the commencement of sacred feasts. But now they are only silent witnesses on the relief of the Titus Arch. You are witnessing the sad results of ignoring the words of Jesus to study and understand the prophecies of the book of Daniel. May God help us not to repeat the same mistake. Another reason why we should study the prophecies of Daniel is because they tell us about Christ, the Son of Man, Jesus, the Rock of Ages. The book of Daniel tells us that Jesus is coming soon to give us a better life than the one we now have. It's going to be a life where the vase of peace and happiness will never be shattered by disappointments. Jesus invites us in Luke 20 verse 18 to fall on him with all our hardness and bitterness. How do we do it? by beholding Christ dying on the cross for our sins. This kind of look changes our cruelty into kindness. And now for the continuation of the exciting study of the vision of Daniel chapter 7. In our previous lecture, we discovered the marvelous resemblance between chapter 2 and the image and chapter 7 and the four beasts. At the Rathaus at Nuremberg, Leonard Kern, the sculptor, placed Nebuchadnezzar next to the lion to tell the onlooker that the first beast represents the Babylonian Empire. Next to the lion is the bear, which represents the Medo-Persian Empire, to make sure that the onlookers get the important biblical fact that reformers placed Cyrus the Great next to the bear. The third beast that Daniel saw was a leopard with 4 wings. The sculptor placed Alexander the Great next to it to remind us that this was the great Grecian Empire. When it came to the fourth beast, Leonard Kern had no problem in identifying it as the Roman Empire. To make sure that onlookers got the message, he placed Julius Caesar next to this nondescript beast. Since 1617, the Rathaus in Nuremberg proclaims to the world the truth about the prophecy of Daniel chapter 7. It was here at Nuremberg that the greatest trial in history was conducted, the Nazi trial. Why here? God wanted the newsmakers of the world to see the unchangeable message of the prophecy of Daniel. Let's listen to Daniel's description of the fourth beast. Daniel 7 verse 7, After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Who are these 10 horns? Verse 24 gives us the answer and says that they are 10 kings or kingdoms that will come out of the fourth beast. Verse 8, I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked up by the roots. And there in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. So what does Daniel see? He sees in vision how the Roman Empire disintegrates and how 10 nations emerge from its ruins. This is exactly the same message as the metal image with 10 toes, partly of iron and partly of clay. After the 10 nations have been established, Daniel sees another horn emerging, which also represents a medieval power. If we can identify this little horn power, which came up after the fall of the Roman Empire, we will have a key to unlock the rest of the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation. For the next few minutes, we will see how the biblical identification of the little horn is perfectly confirmed by historical facts. The Colosseum in Rome is a symbol of the once mighty Roman Empire. I'm going to ask a few historians on Roman history to tell us which power emerged after the fall of the empire and the establishment of the European nations. Buckle up, fasten your seat belts. Historian Eckhart says, when the Roman Empire had disintegrated and its place had been taken by a number of rude, barbarous kingdoms, the Roman Catholic Church not only became independent of the state in religious affairs, but dominated secular affairs as well. Every single historian will tell you that Papal Rome emerged out of the ruins of the ancient pagan Roman Empire. This prophecy of Daniel is telling us that the little horn power has made his appearance among the 10 horns of the European nations, and that is the medieval church. Thomas Hobbes, English historian, says, if a man consider the origin of this great ecclesiastical dominion, he will easily perceive that the papacy is none other than the ghost of the deceased Roman Empire, sitting crowned upon the grave thereof. When I looked at this sarcophagus at the Vatican Museum, I thought of the accuracy of Bible prophecy. When pagan Rome died and was placed in the sarcophagus of history, another Rome was resurrected, the Papal Rome. When the great prophetic clock of Daniel 7 struck, the little horn power made its appearance. Verses 7 and 8 predicted that Papal Rome would arise among the European nations, and historians confirm this fact. We must engrave this second point in our minds, which predicted that the little horn would come up after the 10 other European nations. I'll tell you why. A Jesuit priest by the name of Alcazar wrote a treatise during the Counter-Reformation on the Antichrist, saying that he was a Greek by the name of Antiochus IV Epiphanes. We call this school of thought preterism. Is this scriptural? No. Why not? Because this Catholic priest places the little horn in the time of the Greek Empire. Is this biblical? No, of course not. What does the Bible teach? Well, the little horn must make its appearance only after the iron legs of the Fourth Empire and after Rome was divided into 10 toes. This is the second identifying marker given to us in Daniel 7 under inspiration from God. The other Jesuit Catholic scholar, called Ribera, also wrote a treatise on the little horn, the Antichrist, and placed him far in the future. But this is also unscriptural. The Bible predicted that the little horn would make his appearance immediately after the fall of the Roman Empire. These two Catholic doctrines were sold to the Protestant world, and today they own them and proclaim them. The third prediction concerning the little horn is very interesting. He would uproot 3 other horns or kingdoms. Let's read about it. Daniel 7 verse 8, I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. And there in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. As I was strolling through the Vatican Museum, I thought of this prophecy. Daniel predicted that the little horn, the papal power, would uproot or destroy 3 horns or kingdoms. Has this prophecy been fulfilled? Yes. The 10 horns of Daniel 7 represent 10 kings, verse 24, that established themselves in the territory of Western Rome. 3 of these were plucked up by a blasphemous little horn, verse 8. They are generally considered to be the Heruli, which was uprooted by Papal Rome in AD 493, the Vandals in AD 534, and the Ostrogoths were uprooted in 538 AD. The fourth characteristic is quite significant. The little horn was to be different from the others. Daniel 7:24, he shall be different. In what ways was the little horn power different from the rest of the European monarchies? Well, the rest of Europe was ruled by secular political powers, but the little horn, the papacy, was a religious political power. These Swiss guards at the Vatican illustrate the point. In medieval times, the Church used secular powers to reach her objectives. Let me share with you one incident that happened during the long reign of papal supremacy. The fortress you see on the hill used to belong to the Albigenses. In AD 1200, Pope Innocent III ordered the King of France to exterminate this religious group of people. Why? Well, they did not believe the Bible the way the Church of Rome wanted them to believe it. Historians Daubigny and Wiley say that more than 1 million of these innocent people were massacred in one single campaign. One night in a vision, the prophet saw a little horn coming up from among the 10 horns. He uprooted 3 of them, and he was different. How? He used the kings of Europe to persecute people who did not agree with him. Now, before you and I become too judgmental of the medieval church and the papacy, let us examine our own hearts. How do we treat people who disagree with us? Sometimes it's our loved ones who disagree with us. How do we treat them? The 5th point mentioned in the prophecy of Daniel 7 is very important. The little horn power was to be a leading power, a prominent one. Daniel 7 verse 20. I also wanted to know about the 10 horns on its head and about the other horn that came up, before which 3 of them fell. The horn that looked more imposing than the others and had eyes and a mouth that spoke boastfully. Did this prediction of superiority come true? Yes. Come with me to the largest church in the world, St. Peter's in Rome. We're going to do a little investigation on the leading role the church played during its long reign. Here is a frieze in St. Peter's. Can you see the Pope in the middle? Can you see a man kneeling down at his feet? This is the mighty German King Henry IV acknowledging the supremacy of the papacy. You are looking at a fulfillment of prophecy from the book of Daniel, which predicted that the little horn power, the papacy, would be a leading power in Europe. We define that the Holy Apostolic See and the Roman Pontiff hold the primacy over the whole world. This comes from the Most Holy Councils, Volume 13, column 1167. This is a self-evaluation by the papacy confirming the 5th identifying mark concerning his leading role in Europe. And here is another statement. It says, the vicar of the incarnate Son of God, anointed high priest and supreme temporal ruler, the Pope, sat in his tribunal impartially to judge between nation and nation, between people and prince, between sovereign and subject. This comes from Henry Cardinal Manning, from the book The Temporal Power of the Vicar of Jesus Christ, page 46. You can only appreciate the tremendous power of these medieval popes once you read their biographies. I was impressed by the accuracy of the Bible prophecies of Daniel when I studied the history of the Roman Catholic Church. I can assure you that the Bible is painfully accurate and true. You're looking at the Pope's annulment of the Magna Carta in the British Museum. It's a kind of Bill of Rights. I want to tell you that this is a supreme evidence of the prediction of Daniel's prophecy that the papacy would be a leading force in Europe. What would you think of a power that comes to 10 Downing Street, London, and changes England's constitution? This is what the Pope did. Not even the UN has a mandate to cancel any country's Bill of Rights, but this is what the papacy did during the Middle Ages, and Daniel predicted it. Tell me, what would you think if you discovered that the prophecy predicted that the papacy would one day nullify the constitution of the greatest superpower ever seen? More about America and the papacy in a future lecture. You are looking at a very interesting site in Rome. In the foreground you see symbols of pagan Rome. One of their gods was Jupiter. In the background you see a building which dated from the time of Papal Rome. This reminded me of the prophecy of Daniel chapter 7, which stated that Papal Rome would come out of pagan Rome. In our follow-up lecture, we are going to look at the rest of the characteristics of the little horn. You will be amazed to see how accurately each one of them was fulfilled. Let me read you verse 25 in the meantime. Ponder over it. Daniel 7 verse 25, he will speak great words against the Most High and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. The saints will be handed over to him for a time, times, and half a time. A prediction that the little horn power will persecute God's people for a definite period of time. In our next lecture, we will discover how this prophetic time works out to be 1,260 years, which began in 538 and ended in 1798 AD. You are looking at the Vatican complex in Rome, where all the great nations of the world have diplomatic representation. And now for a shock. The entire scholarly world was shocked when Malachi Martin published his book, The Keys of This Blood, in 1990. He was a former professor at the Vatican's Pontifical Bible Institute. Just look at the front page. Pope John Paul II versus Russia and the West for the control of the New World Order. Tell me, what happened to the Soviet Union in the meantime? Well, it's gone. Who caused its downfall? Again, the world was shocked when Time magazine came out with a story that the former President Ronald Reagan and Pope John Paul II were behind the fall of communism in Poland. Faced with a military crackdown in Poland, Ronald Reagan and Pope John Paul II secretly joined forces to keep the Solidarity Union alive. They hoped not only to pressure Warsaw, but also to free all of Eastern Europe. The boat of our civilization is in stormy waters. It is only a matter of time before it will go down. Tell me, how are the storms of life affecting you? Is there turmoil in your heart? Does it prevent you from being a kind and considerate person? Jesus is ready to step into your sinking boat and sail you to the harbor of eternal peace in a land where the sun never sets. I want to invite him anew to take charge of my tempestuous life. What about you?
It is no easy matter to tell you that the papacy is the Antichrist. We could have withheld this information, but God would have held us accountable. More shocking facts will be revealed during our next lecture. May God prepare you for many new revelations. Let us pray. Thank you, Lord, for revealing through archaeology and through history our last day enemy. May we pay attention to this and find refuge in Jesus while there is still time. Please open our eyes so that we may see the dangers of his deceit. May we follow your guidance every step of the way till we are safe in our heavenly home with you. Amen.